Welcome to AI for Good, the leading action-oriented global and inclusive United Nations platform on AI. Organized by ITU in partnership with 40 UN sister organizations and co-convened with Switzerland. The goal of AI for Good is to identify practical applications of AI to advance the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and scale those solutions for global impact. In today's session, we're counting on you to use the live video wall feature to ask questions and post comments to help create an engaging discussion. We encourage you to stay until the end, as we will hold a 30-minute networking session in the neural network. Here you can meet, ask questions to our distinguished speakers, connect, and chat with the AI for Good community. It is now time to kick off the session and welcome our first speaker. The floor is yours.
Hello, thank you very much, Anna. Hello and welcome to AI for Good, a webinar series by the International Telecommunications Union, the ITU. My name is Jennifer Woodard. I'm an AI entrepreneur and co-founder of Insight AI, a machine learning startup focusing on the detection and defeat of online harms, and I'll be your moderator today. We are very happy to have you all here for what I know will be an exciting discussion about a topic that is on everyone's mind today, and that is the metaverse. We are here to speak specifically about how AI can enable the future of this exciting new virtual space, as well as the challenges and opportunities we might face in this new frontier. And to discuss this fascinating topic today, we have a panel of distinguished speakers from a variety of different disciplines who are going to be adding their insights into the ways the metaverse will impact AI and how AI will impact the metaverse. Today, we'll be digging into topics such as interoperability, sustainability, infrastructure, creativity, and global collaboration. So let's get started by introducing our speakers for today. Today, we are joined by Robin Raskin, founder of the Virtual Events Group, Noah Lowe, Senior Standards Director for Huawei, Justin McCall, Head of Demand Generation and Partnerships for Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, HPE. We have also Melvin Kwek, Vice Chair of the Metaverse Council, Chief Communications Officer of the Global Esports Federation. We have as well Kepeng Li of Tencent, he's co-chairman of the ITUT SG16 Metaverse Correspondence Group. And we have Dr. Lea di Bello, she's Senior Scientist at Applied Cognitive Science Labs. Welcome to all of you, and welcome again to all of you who are joining us here online today. So before we get started with our speaker, it is my distinct pleasure to give the floor to Dr. Bilel Jamoussi, the Chief Study Groups Department of the ITUT, to open us up with a few words. Welcome, Dr. Jamoussi.
Thank you very much, Jennifer, colleagues and friends. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to this AI for Good webinar to explore the AI innovation required to match our metaverse ambitions. The concept of extended reality has captured imaginations worldwide. It has inspired blockbuster films envisioning a metaverse of enthralling virtual worlds. To technologists, this promise of truly immersive experiences equates to key problems to solve. For different worlds, physical or virtual, to interact seamlessly and offer experiences that can convince and captivate us. AI has the potential to support accurate avatar creation, multilingual accessibility, intuitive interfaces, and VR world expansion at scale. In parallel, we will need to address challenging questions around the ownership for AI-created content, fair use, deepfakes, and accountability for bias. Our expert panel today will guide us through the latest thinking in these areas. Another key point of discussion will be how metaverse worlds could help us to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals relevant to education, healthcare, and inclusion. Let me also take this opportunity to highlight 3 more ITU avenues to address metaverse innovation. This year, our academic conference, ITU Kaleidoscope, takes aim at extended reality, in particular, challenges relevant to interoperability and user-perceived quality. Kaleidoscope is accepting papers until the 20th of June. We are also inviting video demos of Metaverse worlds as part of a special demo track. The conference itself will take place in Accra, Ghana, from the 7th to the 9th of December. The Metaverse is also beginning to feature in the ITU journal on future and evolution technologies. And we expect this trend to continue. Free of charge for both readers and authors, our journal welcomes papers all year on all topics. In addition, a new webinar series presented as part of the ITU journal offers regular talks from researchers of global reputation. Finally, a new competition is inviting young people to create immersive virtual reality experiences to raise awareness about the UN Sustainable Development Goals, offering an intuitive visual interface and no-code programming. The competition aims to attract participants of all skill levels. It is called the Metaverse for SDGs Global Prize and VR Competition. And it is run by US-based organization Exponential Destiny with the support of ITU. Let me conclude by thanking all of our speakers for your contributions to our webinar today, as well to all the participants for joining us. ITU highly appreciates your support, and we look forward to supporting you in this exciting road ahead. Thank you very much. Back to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Dr. Jamoussi, for those words and for the exciting information about all the things that ITU is doing with the Metaverse. Thank you very much. Now, moving into our session, we're going to get started with Robin Raskin, who's going to be setting the stage for our discussions. Robin is a longtime journalist. She's an author, a publisher, an event producer, and advocate for integrating technology into lifestyle. She was actually one of the early editors of PC Magazine and one of the first women to be involved in technology publishing. Later, she founded Family PC Magazine and helped to create Yahoo Tech, as well as many other tech-forward publications. Robin is the author of 6 books on kids and technology and has appeared regularly on CBS and other TV networks. She has served on the National Academy of Sciences Committee to explore internet safety, is a trustee of the CTA Foundation, and is a director of the Global Industry Council founded under UNESCO. Robin also won a Lifetime Achievement Award from the CTA in 2020. Welcome, Robin Raskin.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. So you can tell by the introduction, I've seen this rodeo before, I guess is the way to say it. And so from Web 1.0 to Web 2.0 to now what we're seeing in Web 3.0, it is so vital that we understand both the fundamental concepts underlying things and the challenges that we face. And so I so appreciated the opening comments. And I think my job here today is to take you on a whirlwind tour so that you can see the similarities between existing metaverses, nascent of course, as they grow, and give you a peek at what's to come. So just trying to get my slides moving. There we go. So size of the opportunity, you will hear many numbers batted around. Here are just a few. The market size for building this new metaverse is huge. The job openings, as I like to say, you will not go wrong betting your life on a future job in the metaverse, which is what I used to say about cybersecurity. The 10 most popular cities in the US all have designated chief innovation officers and are all working now to create government metaverse outposts. The promise is vast. It's savings of cost and time, both on an individual level and on a city level, when you don't have to travel somewhere to renew your driver's license or get educated. The scenarios for planning cities, for heading towards the SDGs with carbon neutrality are amazing when you don't have to pick up one piece of real material, but you can play what if scenarios. Tourism, cultural events, education and training. I will go through all of them, but first, the ideals underlying them. And as many of you are aware, the metaverse will be based on the blockchain. And that is because it can create an immutable record of all transactions. There are sustainability issues that are being addressed, but it's very important to understand all the metaverses will be based on blockchain. They will all be decentralized, meaning it's not going to be a Mark Zuckerberg or a Jamie Dimon who owns the metaverse and dictates the rules. It will be decentralized decision-making. I will show you in some of my slides about the convergence of digital and physical, because the metaverse does not exist just out there as a place that you go. For the first time, the internet will be a bridge between the real world and the metaverse world. We'll talk about digital twins, and we'll talk about interoperability between worlds. But underlying these principles are enabling technologies. Sort of like if you think back to wearables, what happened? Bluetooth, the cloud, and sensors came together. They all existed before, but the packaging of them created thousands of wearable devices that get better and more precise today. The same thing with the metaverse. Cloud computing, artificial intelligence, machine learning on data sets in the real world, XR, AR, VR, and real life all converging. NFTs, which I'll talk about later, but the notion that there's a utility to things that you own and a proof of ownership in the metaverse. And the fact that most of these are built on gaming engines, whether it's the Unreal Engine or Unity, that understood the laws and the renderings of the real world long before we started creating metaverses. So these enabling technologies you'll see come together in so many different ways. I was just down at South by Southwest, where I got a choice to make my own avatar and use it on my journey through South by Southwest. I chose to look like me, sort of, but you could choose to look like a unicorn or a horse or anything your heart desires. This is Decentraland, one of the largest, most mature metaverses at the time. They've got their own currency within Decentraland. It's called Mana. This was a fashion show that they did, where there were actually runway shows, panels. You could buy things, you could try things on, you could meet other people. And what I want to point out is each one of these avatars has spent real life dollars, in this case, Ethereum, to outfit themselves in a way they saw appropriate. So not only are you attending fashion shows, but you are dressing for them in digital clothing that actually costs more than a lot of the real clothing that you own. Estee Lauder was there and did an interesting thing to promote their product, which was to drop NFTs in people's wallets that let their avatars have a glow. And this was to represent their night serum. But it's a way that you can see where brands in the real world are going to work in the metaverse to create a seamless, I'm going to glow in the metaverse and I'm going to buy my Estee Lauder in the real world. Tommy Hilfiger did the same thing. You could buy a sweatshirt out of his fall collection and you could put it in your wallet and it is an NFT. But come the fall, when those objects are in the physical stores, you are invited to bring your mobile device with your NFT into the physical store and get a real sweatshirt. So again, you're seeing the blending of on and off commerce, and more examples, again, in beauty and fashion and concerts and entertainment have been way ahead in this field. This is Perfect Core, their augmented reality makeup try-on, but now they're selling NFTs for you to put on your digital persona as you go to meetings. And these digital persona, each one of these looks is about $1,000 American dollars. So they're not inexpensive, and yet they are selling. Entertainment, as I said, has also been at the forefront. This is Roblox, which was traditionally thought of as a kids platform and is now aging up with their audience. Not only can you watch the little Nas concert and attend as your avatar and dance, but there's merchandise, there's VIP seating, all of the things that you would expect in the real world transferred to the metaverse. Sandbox, a big competitor to Decentraland, has its own currency called Sand. You can buy land. People are hiring architects, real architects from the real world to go into the metaverse world and design their buildings. You can play games. You can store your assets. So again, each one of these lands, I like to think about them more as kind of nation states than one big metaverse. And I kind of liken it to the European Union, that you can travel from one metaverse to another, and that is the interoperability they're working on. So if I buy a Gucci bag in Decentraland, I can bring it with me to Sand. And then again, this idea of, you've all seen Bored Apes. They became very popular as digital NFT artwork that you could own, but you're starting to see the utility. This is the Bored Ape Travel Club. You buy one of these apes and you can stay at these luxury boutique hotels in Bali or Jordan or wherever it is that they have built physical structures. And you can even go to a Bored Ape restaurant now in the real world. So you're seeing this blurring. And at the end, it will actually be, unlike Web 2.0 that sort of hurt local stores and physical brick and mortar stores, this may actually create a flow that's interesting. I think everybody's familiar with Meta. This is formerly Facebook. The Zuckerberg and Meta vision of the metaverse is, first of all, it's torso-less because cameras can only capture your face for the moment. But it is, I could be a real person in real life interacting with these avatar people. The tools like whiteboarding, note capturing are all there. And the idea is, at first level, to begin to replace the office with the work from anywhere concept. And their metaverse does require virtual reality glasses, which does eliminate some people, whether it's for health reasons and nausea, or whether it's for economic reasons. Has a place to go in Decentraland. Right now it's proof of concept. You can see Jamie Dimon's NFT, you can see moving tigers, but they're having meetings there, introducing people to the concept of the metaverse. Many of the brands are taking some of the SDGs and using the metaverse to promote their reason for social action. In this case, H&M was promoting recycling. And I'm going to play you, I don't know if this is working, but this is a Accenture's place in Decentraland. It's called the Nth Floor. They built it in Microsoft Alt Space. They invite you to sit at home with your goggles on and meet your colleagues. And again, they are preparing their consultancy to go out and work with their clients on helping establish their identities in the metaverse. Governments, and I just want to spend a minute on this because I think it's so important. For the same reasons brands are going there, governments are being very active, at least some of them, in creating participatory governments in the metaverse where they will complement existing governments. So this is Seoul, Singapore, so sorry. And you can actually go there, you can attend a current event, you can attend, you can go to a town hall, you can renew certain papers, you can apply for visas. Many of the functions that you can do in the real government world, you can do in this metaverse world. Barbados is another really interesting application. They could not afford to have an embassy in each country. So rather than do that, they launched the first embassy in the metaverse, where you can learn about how to do business with them, further their economic goals as well as your goals, and do anything that you would do in a traditional embassy, but in the metaverse. The same idea of digital twins holds not just to government, but to factory floors. why work on prototypes in the real world, which is quite expensive, when you can test an assembly line in the metaverse with artificial intelligence being trained on data sets of vast amounts of information. This happens to be BMW's factory. You can do showrooming. This is a company called Room that comes out of Germany and is doing a fabulous job of prototyping and showrooming things in the metaverse. This is also the Bahamas. And in Seoul, same idea. You can do anything from go to a concert, to hear the town meeting, to find out the Little League schools. So local journalism, which has been hurting for many years, has an opportunity to exist in these metaverses in their respective countries. And I think that is so important. And here's a concert in the Seoul Room. In Dubai, you can actually begin to buy land in their metaverse that corresponds to physical places in Dubai. And or the US military, heavily on training in the metaverse so that before you ever enter a fighter plane, you are fully trained on every scenario that could happen. And thanks to AI, this training gets better and knows about your personal style and gets trained on more and more variables as you go. Education in the metaverse, I can't say enough, but if you have had a chance to put on VR goggles and walk through an atom or walk through a cadaver or do a virtual surgery, the opportunities to learn through immersion are incredible. This one happens to be Da Vinci, in case you don't recognize it. And health in the metaverse, again, the UAE is had a big emphasis on from their Ministry of Happiness, where you can go visit the doctor in a teleconference setting, in a metaverse setting, and get the basic services that you need. We don't have all the peripherals yet to a full medical examination, but that will come. So the benefits are many. You bypass bureaucracy. I fully intend to get my next driver's license renewed in the metaverse. You've got an increased presence in the world, even if you are a smaller country. You've got a feedback loop. You know where your users are going. What services are they using? What aren't they using? Where is the UI? Where can it be improved? And you've got concerns that I know our other speakers will mention. The people that you're looking at on this screen are not real. They are synthetic humans. We're going to have to figure out a way to identify, be transparent about what's synthetic, what's not. We know we're at risk of all sorts of new cyber attacks in a metaverse world. And for children, we're already seeing everything from harassment to bullying happening in the metaverse. And I like to end with regulation. We haven't even caught up on Web 2.0's regulation and how we feel Web 3.0 or the metaverse will have a whole new set of concerns and regulations. So I hope that quick walkthrough made it sort of tied some themes together that I think our other speakers will give you more detail on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robin, for helping us paint the picture of the metaverse from so many different perspectives. Makes me want to spend some time in the metaverse myself. Looks like fun. So it really helps setting the context for many of the topics we're going to be discussing today in our panel. And speaking of our panel, we're going to move into that right now with our first speaker. Our first speaker is Dr. Lea di Bello. Dr. di Bello is a cognitive scientist and thought leader in the area of business expertise. As one of the inventors of the Future View technology program, she has led interdisciplinary teams on major technology projects for over 20 years. Dr. di Bello is best known for the development of a particular kind of activity-based strategic rehearsal approach that has been shown to greatly accelerate learning through cognitive reorganizations and improve organizational performance. Dr. Bello is a recipient of more than 17 research funding awards from the National Science Foundation, NASA, the National Academies of Science, the Russell Sage Foundation, and the Office of Naval Research, among others. Dr. Lea di Bello, welcome to AI for Good.
Thank you. That was a great introduction. It made me remember what I've done. at my age. I'm just going to share my slides here. I was very interested by Robin's introduction. Mine is a little bit different. I'm looking at the metaverse and from the point of view of how the brain processes all this new stuff and experiences. I'm a cognitive scientist, so I'm always looking at technology and how it's received by us as human beings, and particularly cognitively. I'm hoping that my slides are working. Are they advancing for all of you? Are my slides advancing? I began my career studying workplace culture when technology was first transforming businesses dramatically. The rate of business change has increased over 1 million-fold since the 1970s. I was working for a pioneer in workplace cognition at the time. And at the time, it was believed that people cognitively stopped in their careers, basically as adults. With the influx of technology in workplaces and having workplaces change exponentially, we realized that this may not be the case. And in fact, in the 1980s, it was assumed that people would not adapt to technology changes. So we started doing research on how rapid technology change was affecting people cognitively in workplaces. People did adapt, but not as we thought. So we started doing field work in organizations, and we started looking at human beings as biological organisms. People have not evolved in over 100,000 years. And, but we have evolved. We use iPhones, we go to the moon, we do rocket science, and yet we are the same organism that lived in caves over 170,000 years ago. In the 1980s and 90s, I was a professor, and it was assumed that specialty education would be needed to prepare people for the internet, for example. None of that really happened. In fact, traditional approaches like computer education were too slow to address the velocity of change. And installing new workers was not adequate to deal with enterprise technology changes. More to the point, workers did not need the change. And this is because fundamentally people are tool users. We've known that people have adapted to, in fact, ice ages, and our species has survived ice ages when other species have not. And as recently as the last 20 years, people have managed to learn extremely complex objects like smartphones. Most of us don't realize how complicated smartphones are. As a cognitive scientist, you know, I really appreciate the complexity of a common object like a smartphone or a game console, because I'm always looking at how the brain uses things. My father, who's in his 90s, has managed to figure out how to use the smartphone basically without instructions through trial and error. And that's because human beings have always incorporated tools. We intuitively and automatically find how to use complex tools by finding a fit with our own cognition through trial and error. So we started to look at how this all works with the metaverse and how this all works with AI through smart rehearsals. And it turns out that AI and the metaverse are good news for our species. We started to help people adapt to rapid technology through smart rehearsals. First physically, basically through the metaverse. And we started to leverage the way that people naturally adapt. Now, just to give a little credit here, my colleagues Gary Klein and Robert Hoffman, who are famous cognitive scientists in their own right, call this AIQ, which is kind of a new basic skill that we're seeing in human beings, which is basically the idea that we are developing a new cognitive skill to adapt and incorporate AI into our own cognition. It's a kind of appropriation. We're becoming AI cyborgs in a way, and the metaverse is no exception. Now, this is just a little bit of an evolution of future view. As you can see on the left, we started out with physical models and we evolved into the metaverse. And it's really cognitively no different. People appropriate models and tools by externalizing their own cognition into models like a sandbox space. And this extends our ability to think about problems outside of our heads, and it basically extends our RAM space to think about complex things. The metaverse extends that space exponentially than anything we've seen before. Now, why does it work? Now, remember, I'm a brain scientist, so this all comes down to that for me. The rehearsal method, including using the metaverse, taps into our adaptive unconscious process. This has been with us since we evolved 170,000 years ago to be tool users. Our adaptive unconscious learns 200,000 times faster than our conscious process, which is what we address when we're in school settings. Rehearsals of all kinds focus on the adaptive unconscious, which maximizes the power of our learning. Metaverses have the ability to focus the adaptive unconscious and prevent what we call random learning. The reason the adaptive unconscious has never been successfully harnessed is because it's unconscious and very random. We don't really know what we learn in our adaptive unconscious because it tends to have a mind of its own. We've all had a situation where we're thinking about a difficult problem. We go to bed, we wake up, we have the answer. That's the adaptive unconscious regurgitating and shuffling the deck while we're asleep. With the metaverse, we have the power to focus the adaptive unconscious by controlling the experiences that we have, as opposed to just having the normal everyday noise and signal of life. What we've done over the past 25 years is learn what to put in a metaverse to harness the power of the adaptive unconscious. And not to get into too much detail, by doing that, we've found that we can fly in the face of the 10,000 hour rule and in 18 to 16 hours, get 5 years of accelerated expertise. Now, the Future View platform, I don't have a lot of time to get into this, but it pushes the envelope even more. So we've developed a whole technology platform in the metaverse that can really push this to the max. And now that it's AI supported, it allows people to extend their thinking outside themselves even more. And basically it has two big uses. One is it helps corporations think about problems that are too difficult to think about in 2D, like climate, strategy, avoiding market crashes. We've helped some companies recover, for example, from the subprime mortgage crisis in 2009. And we're helping now in mining and ESG issues overseas. but it also helps individuals accelerate their learning in certain domains. The key properties that make that possible are, one of them, the biggest one is, and Robin talked about this, is it's immersive. You're there. It's your experience. It's dynamic. It changes with your decisions. Every decision that you make can have an immediate time compressed consequence. So you can see, okay, if I make this decision, I don't pay for it in 5 years, I pay for it right now. So I know what will happen right now if I do this. The event generator in our platform can create an unfolding context that can show you what would happen at a macro level and at a micro level. It's vertically integrated. And it's agent-based, so it can be very open-ended. We don't have to script the scenarios like in a game. So it's the ultimate what-if world. And here, as I said, are the two uses. It can, for individuals, accelerate expertise, and for corporations, it can help solve very big problems. There is quite, it's 25 years of work, so there's quite a bit of detail here, but this is how we do it, and this is how it's different than other metaverses. There's quite a bit on the back end. I didn't show this to my developers because they would probably go crazy because it's much more complicated than this, but this is a very simplified diagram of the core elements that give it its power in the back end. Here's an example of an open pit mine in South America. This is in the bottom, there are vehicles, there are people, there's about 40 people down there. And this is something where we're wargaming the actual configuration and the mining operations and some safety issues. This is just one mine of 6 in the portfolio. Here is a control room where the mines are actually being managed. And you can see that there are people milling around here and they can manage the actual mines and the digital twins. And in the lower right here is a graphic where supervisors are learning to do psychological safety management, and it's algorithmically connected to the tonnage output. So you can do all kinds of wargaming of mining, but also leadership. And lastly, here is something where we're doing rehearsing cognitive flexibility under uncertainty for the Office of Naval Research. And again, this is a whole city.
Thank you so much,
just
Dr. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
no, I'm done. These are
Okay.
just some outcomes that we've done for some of our clients. I have to brag about this. I'm sort of required.
Okay,
Oh,
we can
my
talk
final,
about
my final remark is that AI and metaverse can extend our cognitive space. And I really want to end on that hopeful note, because so many people are struggling with complexity now. And I think that the metaverse can give us some hope and help us all adapt if we use it properly. And that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. di Bello, for taking us into the world of future view. Your presentation really has done a great job of showing us kind of a real life example of how AI can enable the metaverse to act as a scenario for extending thinking beyond ourselves and really solving kind of these complex problems that can only be done in spaces like this. And thank you for ending on a positive note. That was very nice as well. So moving on to our next presentation. Our next presentation is from Noah Luo. Mr. Luo is the chair of the ITUT Study Group 16 and vice president of standards and industry development at Huawei Technologies. Mr. Luo's role oversees a wide range of responsibilities, including standards, industry collaboration, ecosystems, and telecom regulatory policies. Mr. Luo is active in various standards fields, including network functionalities, virtualization, multimedia communication, cloud computing, and others. He is now leading Huawei standards work in the area of NFV and multimedia. Welcome, Noah Luo, to AI for Good.
Thank you very much, Jennifer, for introducing me. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully, you can see my video clearly. I'm based in Lausanne, Switzerland, physically not very far from headquarters of ITU. Today, I'm going to give you a talk to provide the Study 16's perspective about the Metaverse. Now, I think I will share my desktop for you to see. I think, yes, I will. Oh, where it is, we need to share.
Just as a reminder, Noah, we have 10 minutes for your presentation.
Yeah, that's good. Can you see my slides now? The desktop is okay?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, so I'm the chairman of Study 16. Probably for some of you or many of you, don't know what Study 16 is. If you need some background, general background message about ITU, here you are. Under ITU, there are 3 major branches. The TSB, or Telecommunication Standard Bureau, is one of the 3 major branches responsible for developing standards. So there are 11 study group under T sector or TSB, and we are one of them. We are responsible for study relating to ubiquitous multimedia application, multimedia capability for service application. ITU leadership usually assign roles of leader study group to a certain study group depending on its technical strengths and technical relevance. Here, we are assigned a role of a leader study group in the following area. I highlight those in red to emphasize their roles relevance with Metaverse, for example, human factor and ICT accessibility, and the underlying technology for multimedia, audio, video, AR, VR, XR, and also distributed ledger technologies. Our title is Multimedia and Related Digital Technologies for this new study period, starting this year. Here is a detailed view of our structure. There are 14 questions. Question is a functional independent unit, and each study group responsible for the study of a certain technical spec. We are here, there are 14 of them, but 13 of them are strongly technical oriented. They are grouped in different working parties. In addition to this ordinary question, we have a task force called focus group. We currently have 3 focus groups focusing on AI for health, AI for autonomous driving, and on the vehicular media. And JWhite is a joint branch created by ITUT Study 16 and ISO IEC JTC1, specializing in the underlying technology for audio, video, coding, and processing. Okay, I'm sorry, forgive me for my quite poor skill for creating this artistic representation, but hopefully this figure will convey the main message I want to get across to you. So what are Metaverse? And yeah, so to different people, in different people's eyes, they mean different things. From our community in Study 16, it means several things. For the success of Metaverse ecosystem, to make it happen, we need very benevolent climate. That means regulatory policy and a general laws and other aspects. However, those applications like these different trees, hopefully they can grow into the forest. We are provide just a soil which provides fertility. We have different technologies being developed in Study 16. And for example, you need a very high-speed broadband network and also very powerful computing in the cloud for AI and for generic computing. digital services based on trust, DLT, for example, is very, very at the core of the Metaverse. And also don't forget about the human-oriented aspect. We are studying health accessibility. I quite agreeable to Dr. Lea's presentation on cognitive science and psychology in general, and also economic consideration and many other non-technical things will be very important for the development of Metaverse. We have some existing activities for relevant studies, for example, network structure, infrastructure, DLT, and also DAO and AI. AI, we have been working on this AI for many years in the past to deepen our understanding the relation between AI and the many aspects of multimedia application and service, including Metaverse, in its early stage. Accessibility of contents, interaction, and terminal technology will be much highly human-oriented. We group all those relevant questions in different clusters. For example, number one is multimedia. We have a lot of underlying motivated technologies for creating realistic and immersive multimedia representation. Metaverse will rely on, and also AI, and we create a digital culture study area a couple of years ago. Is highly relevant to Metaverse in certain aspect, and also for visual audio coding, immersive live experience, DLT, and human factor. So the relationship between AI and Metaverse, in our eyes, in our understanding, there are multiple that kind of relation in existence. For one thing, like content production, content representation, and content review are highly related to AI technologies. How we can create a very realistic, immersive Metaverse representation based on the audio, video, and other data, it has a strong reliance on AI algorithm for interaction and also for multi-modality communication between the human beings and the virtual world. It's still a case of argument whether it's too early to think about technically standardization for Metaverse in a certain organization like Standardization. Well, the answer may be yes or maybe not. Anyway, for our community in ITU, it's not, it still be useful if we have a far sight looking into the future. For us, maybe in the next few years, the world will have strong demand for some technical standards in relevance to Metaverse in the following area. First is requirement from multimedia perspective, and the technical framework need to be created in conjunction with some other organization probably, and the interoperability is always at the core of any communication process. And the Metaverse is no exception here. Application interface will be highly beneficial to human beings. I like the example given by Dr. Lea about an old gentleman trying to figure out how to use smartphone in his 90s. If some technologies are being in deployment, I think people may feel it's much easier in the future to use their smart device, which is becoming more and more complex, but smarter and smarter. Okay, this is the last two slides. What we have, in addition to all those technical areas, where we are conducting technical work relevant to Metaverse, we create, and the strong demand from industry academia at our last meeting, which took place in January this year, the agreement is to create a new correspondent group as a booster for the further work on Metaverse in general. What has been agreed upon is preliminary standardization analysis and standard issues and work method. And also we are going to produce some technical analysis to enable people to see clearly a landscape from technical point of view and also non-technical point of view. Okay, I list several organizations we want to work together, including ISO, IEC, JTC1, IEC, W3C, IETF, 3GPP, and also Kronos. We are going to launch some collaboration with a number of industry alliances, including the one newly formed in China. We call it Metaverse Innovation and Exploration Alliance. Okay, I think this is a last slide. Hopefully my voice is still good. So FAMOUS is an acronym we are created tentatively for a focus group we are going to create. If things are going on very well, we are going to create this focus group in October in our next meeting. Of course, your support, your understanding, your sympathy are very ideal for us to create this focus group. So it stands for Focus Group on AI and the Metaverse, Open and Ubiquitous System. I think there are a lot of benefits about using this mechanism, which is well established in ITUT focus group. For example, it features faster responses to industry, academia, and also we always take a success-oriented approach. It's result-oriented. We want to achieve openness, flexibility, agility, and we really open our arm, open our heart to collaboration for both inside and outside ITU. And I think such a creation through our discussion, I think with your support and understanding will be timely. And in the future, we want to achieve some seamless transposition, conversion of a focus group deliverable into a fully deployable ITUT recommendation. Okay, thank you very much. That's all I want to talk today. So thank you, Jennifer, once again for giving me the floor. And I want to give my thanks to all those people who have to make this happen for this Metaverse and the session of AI for Good Summit. We are grateful to all the good inputs because all those are potential useful clues for our to start our work. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Noah, for taking us through the different technical elements necessary for fully understanding the metaverse, and particularly its relationship with AI. And I really am highly interested in what's going on with SG 16, and we really can't wait to hear more about what comes out of this study group in this area. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Melvin Kwek. Melvin is the CEO of BBDO Singapore, and he has over 25 years of experience in integrated marketing and brand communications. He's also senior advisor at the Global Esports Federation and has recently been appointed as vice chairman of the Metaverse Council. The council will advise the GEF board on the evolving landscape of cryptocurrencies and blockchains, NFTs, and metaverse-related frameworks. It also seeks to provide thought leadership in the space of driving integration of related technologies such as virtual reality, Web3 and Web4 with esports and gaming. Thank you, Melvin, for joining us today on AI for Good.
Hello there. I'm just trying to switch on the video. There we go.
Just to remind you, Melvin, we have 10 minutes. Thank you.
No worries. Right, can everybody see my slide?
Yes, we can see it, Melvin.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer, and good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone listening in. I guess my presentation, kind of tails off nicely from where Robin opened, because what I'm going to be talking about is building real-world value through the metaverse. As a marketer, where I'm most interested to see is, how the metaverse can help to shape, real-world value, the real-world value narrative, through brands and products in particular. And before we, look at several case studies that I prepared, I'd like to provide my own definition of the metaverse. As we all know, there's been tons of different definitions in terms of how the metaverse is going to be, is defined. And the first thing that I want to say about the metaverse is that it's a phygital space, right? It's a space where digital and physical converges. Arguably, social platforms like Twitter, like TikTok, can also be defined as metaverses in their own right. It's about identity and digital ownership. Web3 is the internet that's owned by its users, not large corporations or governments. Right? It's a lifestyle that's enabled by new technologies, as I think all the previous speakers have sort of spoken about. We've got blockchain, 5G, augmented reality, virtual reality, extended reality, and many, many more technologies which are constantly being revised and created as well. And lastly, it's an enabler of possibilities. And the possibilities that we're talking about is really about building real world value through the metaverse, gamification, and technologies. Right. So how can a brand reposition, pivot, become more endemic in this space? This is what we are talking about when we talk about being an enabler for real world value. So we will really look at two examples in which the metaverse and its technologies can enable brand and product value enhancement. How can a brand increase the equity and value of its products? And social and eco good. We'll look at a fun, irreverent NFT project with a serious environmental cost. So the first case study that we're going to look at is the Gucci Garden experience. So this was to celebrate Gucci's 100th anniversary, and they partnered with Roblox, the game platform, to create a digital twin of its event in Florence, which is the Gucci Gardens archetype. As of end April 2022, it was reported that there are over 54 million active users on Roblox every single day. Just to talk about sheer scale, is equivalent to the entire population of South Korea logging in daily, onto the platform. So it's really quite massive. Right, and the entire virtual event is mapped almost to representation, is because it's a digital twin. So as you can see on the diagram, we have the Web2 archetype, which is based in Florence, and then you have the Web3 equivalent on the right side. At the bottom you see, the Web2 Roblox metaverse, space, with the glitzy truck, and then you see the Web3 version as well. Everything is done almost to scale, and the visitors enter this space as featureless avatars, which then take on new patterns, new skins as they journey through each different feature and aspect of, of the event. So as everybody's journey through this event is quite different, in terms of how they walk it through, each avatar pattern will be different to its users, and they will be able to use it almost like a PFP as well. As a profile picture. But what really got the attention of the world, what really broke the internet, when it came to this event, was the fact that it was, it really became serious business when this virtual Gucci bag, got sold for $350,000 Robux. So Robux is Roblox in-game currency, and that is the equivalent of more than US $4,000. The actual bag itself costs 20% less in real life. So that goes to show you, the value perception in a metaverse, can actually be a lot higher than in real life as well. Mind you, this bag has got no real life purpose. I mean, it cannot even be used as an NFT. It's merely an accessory that you can use in this game itself, and that's it. So the key takeouts that we can have, from this case study is the fact that, the metaverse has clearly given Gucci a whole new platform, for creative expression. It's also made the brand a lot more endemic and opened up a whole new audience segment and revenue streams to the brand. In fact, Gucci just announced that they've just set up the Gucci Gaming Academy, which really signals their serious intentions to become a serious player in the esports and the metaverse space. It's really, the metaverse also offers a real opportunity to trial new products and demand-based pricing. So the success of in-game accessories like the Dionysus bag really allows Gucci to use the metaverse as a rich data center to determine, among other things, things like product viability, the right sort of target audiences, to go for, as well as optimal pricing structures as well. So this is the first case study. I'll take you through to another project, which is a little bit more irreverent. And it's actually an NFT project, which is on the Solana blockchain, and it's based out of Tulum in Mexico. Right. So on the left, what you see are the NFTs. It's called Gorilla Gang. And what has happened here is that when the NFTs are sold, the money made from selling the NFTs is used to organize plastic waste collection activities in Tulum. You can see it on the above images under social and eco benefits. And the project is also a shareholder in a waste refinery facility in a partnership with PetGas Mexico to convert the plastics into energy as well. Any revenue that's generated from the refinery is given back to the NFT holders as dividends. All right. And at the bottom, you can see that there are also in real life benefits of owning these NFTs. So when you buy these NFTs, you can actually stake them to own silver crypto tokens by staking them into a liquidity pool. And you can actually use these coins to buy a whole variety of items. So for example, there's the Gorillae brand matcha powder, which is available in Latin America already. It can also be used to pay for food and drinks at participating merchants in Tulum, and also exclusive stays at Gorillae's treehouse residences, which is in Tulum at the moment, but as I understand it, they're also looking to build a bigger footprint in the rest of Mexico as well at this point of time. As they did not build a metaverse, they are currently riding on other metaverses. So what you see here, are two metaverses that they intend to partner with. On the left is a metaverse called Savannah, and on the right it's another metaverse project called Yakuverse, and they both sit on the Solana blockchain as well. And what they will do is partner up with these metaverses to establish virtual branded lifestyle facilities, which includes events such as breathing and meditation classes that you can pair your Oculus to. As you can see at the bottom, and likewise, they also intend to educate people with the use of the Oculus, on what sustainability is all about, as well as use less plastics, among other sort of classes as well. So the key takeouts for this are, so metaverses give startups and businesses immense possibility for scalability. And by scalability, what I mean is the ability to crowdfund seed capital in a relatively short amount of time, the ability to scale presence and offerings across different metaverse properties quickly, which is simply harder to do in real life. And what you do is that you get that global reach through the different metaverses, while you may be operating it out of a single space, in a single office as well, which is almost impossible to sort of comprehend, even 3 years ago. The second point is about gamification. It really enhances education and behavioral adoption. So the movement towards play and earn versus pay to earn creates a greater sense of fun and enjoyment versus the need to just make money through gaming. And this will obviously have a positive impact in educational efforts beyond just sustainability into areas such as diversity as well. And lastly, metaverses can boost real-world economies, as we can see from the adoption and usage of the silver coin in Tulum. As I understand from Elio, the project founder as well, the project is gaining a lot of massive popularity in Latin America, with silver being adopted at a rapid pace, and really creating, a whole new currency and economy at the same time. And that's basically the end of my presentation. And you have essentially my contact details here should you wish to discuss this more. And it's been a pleasure, doing this presentation as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melvin. Wonderful presentation. It's so fascinating to learn about all of the possibilities that the metaverse is enabling for brands, as well as some of the economic and social good we're seeing coming out of these spaces. It's very, very fascinating. Thank you so much. Next, we'll be hearing from Justin McCall. Justin is a global head of demand generation for HPE's software business and leads HPE's worldwide partnerships across the United Nations, ITU, and AI for Good. Justin's work includes building partnerships across industry, academia, and NGO and government institutions to address a variety of impact verticals, including natural disaster management, autonomous mobility, financial inclusion, mobile healthcare, climate impact, agriculture, and peace and security. Justin also lectures on entrepreneurship and venture capital at the graduate level, and as a 24-year veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces, is a European Foreign Area Officer within the United States Navy Reserves. Thank you, Justin, for being with us today, and thank you for joining us here on AI for Good.
Oh my gosh, Jennifer, thank you so much for the introduction, and huge thanks to the AI for Good for having me and HPE today. And thanks to everyone around the world. Happy time of day to you, depending on where you are. So I don't know about you. I'm sure, like all of you, I have just been absolutely energized and fascinated by everything we've seen so far. I mean, it's almost impossible not to get energized by this. The way I'm going to approach my 10-minute section of this is a little bit off center, and you might think that HPE is going to come in and hit you in the face with a whole bunch of technical slides, but we're thinking about this at the moment definitely from a technical perspective, and we can go into technical aspects as much as you want, but we're looking at it really more from a leadership point of view, and what will it mean for all of us on this call as panelists, us who are on the call as guests, working together to lead this metaverse into a future reality where we all have a chance to benefit from. And so what I want to do is talk about a framework for that kind of discussion. The way that we're thinking about it today, it's just a starting point. You probably have your own frameworks, but let's just see where it goes. So what you see on the slide is the elements of a metaverse. Thanks to Gartner for pulling this together for us. And these are a lot of the things that you've heard on the call today, from digital currencies to retail that spans from virtual to reality, social media, marketplaces, et cetera, et cetera. There is a wide growing number of these elements. It's kind of hard to escape that hype, right? The media around this. I mean, Facebook is renaming itself to Meta. We have NFTs for everything. I even got a recommendation from my auto mechanic for a crypto coin recently on which one I should buy. Maybe I should take his advice because my track record hasn't been so great. My kids and I, look, we love exploring virtual worlds with the Oculus. And I mean, we all see this rapidly blending of our physical and real worlds. But the thing that's been largely missing, at least in the conversations that I'm having, is who is going to lead in this decentralized world? What are the principles behind that leadership going to be? And to what aim are we doing all of this? Now, most of the conversations that I have, at least the conversations I'm regularly involved in, are very technically oriented. That's the center of a lot of people's focus, is around the metaverse and how it will actually be built. And that's all interesting. It's a great starting point, but especially considering the fact that the metaverse is entirely built on technology, right? The key areas such as blockchain for security, cryptocurrencies for decentralized financial inclusion, and AI ML, which are needed for building all the next big things, they dominate a lot of those threads. And we as a company at HPE have a lot of skin in that game. We have it across our entire stack. Approximately 30% of the world's workloads run on HPE gear. We're pushing out like 4 computers every minute. And it's a big number. So, and it's not just on the compute and the storage side. We're also investing really heavily on edge computing, which is going to be incredibly critical for the metaverse from a distributed computing point of view. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. And how we handle all of that edge compute and data, and how we will learn at the edge as a part of this real-time 3D software-driven based experience. And in areas like that, we have data fabrics that are unbelievable at scale. We can go up to trillions of files and petabytes and zettabytes almost of data storage and movements. And then we're working on concepts that we've deployed in real life, such as swarm learning, where we move away from centralized or even federated machine learning models to be able to take smaller bits of data at the edge, establishing parameters and sharing those parameters across edge nodes, using blockchains to be able to secure those transactions of parameters across those nodes, which basically means that we will be able to, at the periphery of where data starts and to where it learns and where it goes back into an experience, we'll be able to do a lot of that compute at that moment. That's pretty exciting. It's pretty cool. We're seeing this already being deployed in reality. Swarm learning is just a concept, is one way that we do it. There are a lot of those of other ways. And so all of this, on how we can use these smaller amounts of data at the edge, how we can just do distributed machine learning using blockchain, as was said earlier, across the entire spectrum of this, is super fascinating. And all of these have to come together in an ecosystem of big tech players, right? Big and small tech players. But that ecosystem needs to have some technical conditions that need to be met in order to make it work as a metaverse for everybody. It's got to be an ecosystem built on open architectures and open source software where possible. The reason for that is very evident. Open architectures and open source softwares allow rapid acceleration of innovation, allows shared skill sets across teams to be able to go from working on one project to the next project and not having to completely relearn a proprietary system or proprietary platform. It allows for platforms to be able to collaborate and benefit from each other. And that is inherently at the fundamental DNA of what this metaverse is in this decentralized manner. And these ecosystems also got to ensure that we have fair connectivity. Everyone needs to have an ability to have connectivity to the data, connectivity to the platform, connectivity to the interweb of these experiences. The data is going to explode. I saw sources from Intel stating that they think that the compute requirements are going to increase 1,000-fold. To be quite frank, just between Justin and you, I think that is on the low end of the spectrum. I think it's going to be much, much, much larger than that. But the locality of that data as it explodes is what's going to be really interesting. So that's going to require that we think about, where does the data originate? How do we respect the origin of that data? How do we respect the individual and the geography and the localities of where it is on the actual political and cultural end of the spectrum, but then also on the technical end of the spectrum, this gravitational pull of the workloads and how will they gravitate toward where the data is? That's all going to have to be thought through from an engineering perspective. And on top of all that, we got to think super, super, super deep about security. I'm talking about deep all the way down to the silicon level, as well as to the individual level. As also was mentioned at the beginning of the call, we have to figure out how are we going to not just secure identities, but secure people. I want my children, I have 3 children, I want them to grow up experiencing the virtual reality environment, a metaverse where they can participate as empowered participants. But I want them to be safe. I want them to be able to explore their identity or identities, but not have to worry about others exploring a negative version of their identity in a way that creates harm for them. So these are things that we got to think about. There are no really simple answers. There may not be answers at all for some of these for some time, but these are the things that we have to at least acknowledge, that need to be acknowledged, and we need to put them on the table for discussion and consideration as we move forward. And it's the collection of all those individual participants is what are going to make up this metaverse, right? So we need to consider and this is kind of at the level of the discussion we are here today at the ITU level. Think of all of you who are watching today and us who are on the panel. What are the social imperatives that we need to put in place in order to safeguard all of our future by sustainably developing these platforms? And this will include remaining committed to existing carbon emission standards, as well as possibly even adopting more aggressive standards that we can pursue. This is going to be done through a lot of renewable sources. It's going to require recycling of technologies. It's going to require also down at the silicon, at the software level, us optimizing our code base and our workloads in order to reduce what I call workload waste. And we can accomplish this if we work on agreed standards. If we have these standards based on openness, if we base it on interoperability and on inclusion. If we do all this, by doing so, we'll build that metaverse that is accessible to everyone and where everyone has a real sense of ownership. But to what ends will we be doing all of this? Is it just to having another platform, another metaverse, or a metaverse in the plural form, as was mentioned earlier? To what end will we be building all of this tech in the right way and with all these amazing elements to exist? Well, the ends, from my perspective and from a lot of my colleagues at HPE, are empowered participants, is empowering a world, a decentralized world, to have an equal opportunity to accelerate our collective future. And our opportunity on this call is to lead and to align on those principles, to commit to those standards, and to be transparent on what we can and will do. And in this new decentralized world, where every actor has a role and a lead to do so responsibly. And if we do all that, we're going to empower participants and we have a chance to drive impact. That's the conversation model that I think is a good stage setter for how the world will move forward. And Jennifer, I don't know if I have like maybe 1 or 2 minutes just to kind of flip through from a social impact perspective on some of the, I do, or am I out of time?
You got about 30 seconds. Thanks, Justin.
30 seconds is perfect. So we're not just thinking about this from a how will we build all the bits and bobs to make all the infrastructure work. We're also in conversations through the ITU and the AI for Good, and many of you who are on the call today, on how can we do things like preparing for natural disaster recovery, from modeling to and understanding where there are danger zones for individuals living, to how we can optimize responses. How can we work with some of our partners such as Ericsson and the World Economic Forum, Eric White, who we're working very closely with, on making sure that we have financial inclusion and social entrepreneurship opportunities for individuals to get involved. We're looking at autonomous drive, where HPE is heavily invested with companies like DXC, BMW, Mercedes, et cetera, on how autonomous drive can improve road safety, reduce transit times, and ultimately improve life by preserving life on the roads. The guy in me who has repeated traumatic brain injuries looks forward to how the virtual reality aspect can provide treatments, and we look at how we can not just provide treatments to existing issues, but how we can unlock telemedicine, how we can enhance and advance drug development, and unlock relationships for those who are maybe isolated. All of this is going to have to be done in a way to where it's not a single platform removed from everyone else in the world, where everyone has a chance to participate. A lot of virtual first work where everyone, no matter whether you are living in Manhattan or whether you're living in Bangalore, that there's a grassroots level of inclusivity that you will be able to get involved. As Mark Zuckerberg said, the internet, this is the internet of that you are inside of, and rather than the one you're just looking at. So it's super exciting to think about all this, and I look forward to seeing you inside. All right, thanks so much, Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Justin. That was a very insightful presentation. It's really interesting to delve into the side of the conversation and kind of look behind the scenes and see what's happening behind the scenes in the metaverse, and also the things that we need to have in place beyond just the technology to make it become what we want it to become, a place of equality, a place of opportunity. So thank you very much for that presentation.
Thank you. Finally, we have Kepeng Li. Kepeng is a senior standards expert at Tencent. He's also the co-chairman of the ITUT SG16 Metaverse Correspondence Group. Kepeng is mainly engaged in standardization of the metaverse, blockchain and information security. He served as ITUT SG17 WP4 chairman, IETF AI ACE WG co-chair, as well as OMA CD WG co-chair. Welcome, Kepeng, to AI for Good.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. This is Kepeng Li from Tencent. I'm mainly responsible for standard work in Tencent, including Metaverse, blockchain research. I'm also the co-chair of ITUT SG16 Metaverse Correspondence Group. My presentation uses numbers as index from 1 to 10 to give some insights about the metaverse. The content will cover 1 definition, 2 core aspects, 3 phases, 4 levels, etc. In the end, I will talk about opportunities from different perspectives. Firstly, let's take a look about the definition of the metaverse. Metaverse literally means meta plus universe, which means beyond the universe. It's an online virtual world that mirrors the real world. Many people also believe that it's the next generation internet in the next 20 years. And in the future, people can digitally live in the metaverse, and they can entertain, socialize, and work in the metaverse. Next, let's review the development of the metaverse through some key milestones. The main milestone is in 1992. The science fiction Snow Crash proposed the concept of the metaverse. Then in 2006, the gaming platform Roblox became online. Last year was generally considered to be the first year of the Metaverse because many key events happened last year, and the Metaverse became a hot topic in the industry. The Metaverse has two core aspects. The first is the user experience, and the second one is the economic system. User experience is from a narrow Metaverse concept. It focuses on the interaction between people and the world. It focuses on the terminals and the contents. The technologies include VR, AR, and virtual digital humans, digital twins, etc. Then the broad concept of the Metaverse needs to include the construction of an economic system. It focuses on the value distribution and exchange of the digital assets, and it focuses on the digital economics ecosystem. The technologies include distributed identity, blockchain, NFT, etc. Next, let's look at the three development phases of the Metaverse. Metaverse 1.0 is the infrastructure construction phase. In this stage, new internet interaction style, new contents, and new services will be provided. Metaverse 2.0 is the economic system construction phase. In this stage, autonomous collaboration, community, extremely rich digital assets, and low cost of value transaction will be achieved. Metaverse 3.0 is the civilized order construction phase. In this stage, the virtual world and the real world will be fully combined. The Metaverse has 4 levels. Firstly, the virtual world will simulate the real world. Secondly, it will replicate the real world. Thirdly, the virtual world will make innovations based on the real world. For example, based on AI technologies. Finally, the virtual world and the real world will be combined and integrate with each other. The Metaverse will be beyond the reality. From bottom to top, the Metaverse will include 5 supporting systems. The technology system promotes the integration and the interaction between the Metaverse. The content system can be used to promote the dissemination of contents. The economic system can be used to promote the value exchange. The collaboration system can be used to promote multi-party collaboration and get consensus. The governance system can be used to provide governance rules. The Metaverse requires 6 main supporting technologies. There are 3 underlying architecture technologies, including network and computation technologies, AI technologies, and blockchain technologies. Above that, there are backend infrastructure technologies, including IoT technologies, interaction technologies, and e-game technologies. According to the CEO of a US game company, there are 7 layers in the Metaverse. This figure is quite popular on the internet. I guess many of you have already seen this figure several times, so I will not explain it in detail. As mentioned by Roblox, the Metaverse has 8 core elements, including identity, friends, immersive, no friction, variety, anywhere, economic civility. Metaverse has many application scenarios. Here is the main 9 scenarios. For example, users can wear the VR glasses to get immersive experience in the game scenario. Users can enjoy the online concert in the entertainment scenario. There are also many other scenarios like e-commerce, working, etc. Currently, the development of the Metaverse also faces certain potential risks. Let me just take one example: energy consumption. If we want to simulate the real world, it requires a lot of computation work and requires a lot of energy consumption. That's something we want to avoid. Compared to the potential risks, there are more opportunities in the Metaverse. Let's firstly check the opportunities from the global government and the industry perspective. In US, Roblox became the first Metaverse stock last year. Facebook changed to the company name to Meta. In Europe, France's president mentioned that he wants the creation of European Metaverse. In Korea, the government initiates the Metaverse Alliance last year. In Japan, Xiaoi's Meta and NVIDIA established a Metaverse Ecological Consortium and supported by METI in Japan this year. In China, in several provinces, the governments plan to accelerate infrastructure construction this year. From Tencent perspective, we believe that there are a lot of opportunities in the metaverse. Tencent also possesses a lot of technologies and capabilities to explore and develop the metaverse. For example, in the game, social media, and AI-related field, we all have a lot of experience. We believe that the metaverse opportunities are not only in the consumer internet, but also in the industry internet. The metaverse requires connectivity, interaction, and computation capabilities. From AI perspective, AI is an important underlying technology for the metaverse. Let me take the virtual digital human service example. It requires different AI technologies, including modeling, visual, voice, knowledge graph, etc. The virtual digital human is a typical usage scenario in the metaverse. It can provide enterprise services to businesses, for example, customer care, service guide, etc. It can also provide live services to individual customers, for example, smart transportation, smart home. From IoT perspective, there are also a lot of standard opportunities in the metaverse. In January this year, IoT SG16 approved the Metaverse correspondence group. It aims to identify standardization issues and the requirements about the Metaverse, perform gap analysis, and coordinate between different organizations. I'm the co-chair of the Metaverse correspondence group, and I would like to welcome everyone to join this group and contribute your ideas. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kepeng. Thank you for the deep dive into so many different aspects of Metaverse. So it was really exciting to hear about the challenges, but also the opportunities that this virtual space is bringing to users, to global companies, and to the ITU community. So thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
So after all of these exciting presentations, we have a lot to think about, and we also have some questions. We're going to now open up the panel discussion to our presenters. We're going to have lots of Q&A for them. And I wanted to remind you that the floor is also open to all of you online to ask your questions as well. I'd like to invite our panelists to please turn your camera on and show your faces so we can, hey, there you are again. Hi, Robin. Hello. So excellent presentations, lots of different perspectives, lots of different things to talk about. So I wanted to start kind of with a very broad question that I think any of you could take from your own perspective, but I would like to know, since we are very focused on AI and AI for good, obviously, what do you think is the main role or the roles of AI as an enabler for the metaverse? Where do you see the most potential for impact from AI specifically?
Okay, since nobody's taking the lead, I'll start off here with, if you believe that AI is to train computer models on live behavior, you can extrapolate from there. So let's take, we know there's a great resignation going on. There's a shortage of employees, especially in hospitality and retail. So you can imagine that some of this work will be offset to synthetic humans trained with natural language processing and a host of AI skills to take care of some of those things. AI also in learning the mechanisms of building a building, of driving down. In Pittsburgh, they're doing something with traffic light control now, where they have built a replica of Pittsburgh and they are monitoring places of heavy congestion and then controlling the traffic lights with what if scenarios. So those are just a couple of quick examples of how AI is intrinsic to all of this. Just a few examples.
Yeah, and just to follow up on what she said, I think one of the things that's really interesting me is thinking about, from Dr. Di Bello's perspective, from neuroscience. I mean, you look at, as Robin just said, AI is basically a predictive model, right? It's a way to take data input statistically and analyze it and figure out what could happen, what's most likely to happen, and get better and better at doing that in a general way. And what's interesting to me is because all this is going to be very human oriented, right? It's going to be very human computer interactive based, that as those models evolve over time, they will become more and more reflective of our own psychology, our own neurology, and vice versa, that our own psychology and neurology could in turn become affected by our activity with increasing activity with computers. So this is a big open-ended question. I think like everybody has more question marks than I have periods at the end of the sentences on something like that. But that's the thing that's really interesting to me. Not to try to like put Dr. di Bello on the spot, but I'd be really curious from a neuro perspective.
Well, one of the things that we're seeing is that what we use our worlds for is we use AI to see if your plan is going to survive contact with the human people who have to execute on it. So, for example, mining is a big area for us because it's the mistakes are so expensive. So if you make the wrong call, it costs billions of dollars, and often you can't undo it. So when you deploy driverless fleets of vehicles underground or even above ground for mining, it costs several $billion. And the driverless fleets of vehicles are often controlled by drivers who are in Brisbane, and the mine may be in West Australia. So we have them rehearse it in a digital twin in Brisbane, and the AI has a set of assumptions. It might be designed by the company that makes the driverless vehicles, and when they practice in the digital twin, we see all the things that are the theory. The AI theory has a theory of the vectors and what could happen. And when people actually operate that, you can see where they meet in the middle. And for example, the trucks, when they run up against a troop of kangaroos in an open pit mine, they think it's a school bus. So the drivers realize there's never going to be a school bus in an open pit mine in West Australia in the desert. So they sort of adapt, and what's the answer? Do we change the AI to recognize kangaroos, or do we change the operators in Brisbane to recognize the rigidity of the AI? So it turns out that we meet in the middle, that the AI doesn't need to be perfect. The operators need to understand what Gary Klein calls AIQ. They need to have good AIQ. And having people learn that is actually, and rehearse that with metaverses, is actually extremely valuable. And that's turned out to be a very good use of virtual worlds. Learning how to extend their own cognition and make the best use of AI, so that AI is more powerful in a way by not having to be perfect.
Great, thank you so much, Dr. Jamoussi. Thank you, Justin and Robin as well. You're talking about kind of how AI will evolve and innovate within the metaverse. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about, maybe for Kepeng and for Noah, what do you see the role of standards as in innovation, as AI actually makes the metaverse innovate? What do we need to do to actually use standardization to kind of live out the potential of the metaverse?
Okay, may I? Or Kepeng want to take?
You first.
Yeah, I will try to answer this question. It's quite open, but first of all, I would like to say today is a really, really unique experience, or eye-opening chance, because people with abundance of backgrounds, we meet together, sharing ideas. First of all, just a small clue I want to give to Lea. Her experience of working with a kind of unique thing in Australia, how to tell school bus from crossing kangaroo. Probably I will link you to our very interesting focus group on AI for autonomous driving. There are a lot of use cases are being discussed. I will link you, and probably you can contribute this clue. So it's quite general questions. I hope I already provide some clues in my slide. We think they share a lot of common AI and Metaverse. They both extended people's some sensory functionalities and cognitive capabilities, open up new dimensions for people's intelligence and people's experience in a virtual world. So in a sense, they need to join forces together. However, the linkage points, there may be a lot of linkage points. One linkage point may be standardization. When we talk about standardization, don't be terrified. Oh, a lot of technical details need to come onto the same. No, first, like common sense, to any understandable language to any lay people, we start from use case scenario. Well, because I'm the chair, usually I think from a very high level, gather people of similar mandate. Well, and Kepeng and other experts will deal with more technical details, level by level. From my point of view, we really need to lay the foundation for people to understanding what are the most prioritized area to come into the saying of standardization and lay down the rough timeline for the next several years, and also the business consideration, commercial consideration, legal consideration, psychological consideration need to converge to give us guidance. We are under your influence, so I think, but I want to bring all of your wisdom into the next stage of standardization and building and developing the viable use case scenario. This is the gateway, a starting point for everything else. For technical part, I would give it to Kepeng. He's more capable.
Okay, thank you. So I want to mention several things about the standard. Firstly, currently everyone's understanding of the metaverse is different. Some people understand that in a narrow sense, but some people understand that in a broad sense. So there are a lot of differences. So it's necessary to define the terms, concepts, technical frameworks, etc. through the standards, so that everyone can have a dialogue on the same channel. Secondly, in terms of communication protocols, data formats, interactive interfaces, etc., the standards can be used to promote the industry collaboration and interaction to help to resolve the interoperability issues. And then we can also define the security governance, like compliance standards, for example, how to protect privacy, how to achieve content security. And then in the end, we can also define the application guidelines standards to document the best practices to help the industry to deploy the metaverse. We can also use the standards to perform the testing and then to give certificates based on the testing. So that's my understanding. Thank you.
Yeah, and to take that further, standards have always been, I think, kind of like a baseline. Look at wearables or look at graphics boards. There's a standard that makes them all work together, but what differentiates a product is a feature set above and beyond the standard. So yes, I can detect a fall, you can detect a fall. I may be able to do it more precisely or in a different environment. So these standards need to help us with interoperability, but it is building on the standards that will differentiate our products, if that makes sense.
Right, and ensuring proper performance of our products as well. Exactly, Robin. Thank you so much for adding that. So we have also some questions from the audience. I'd like to introduce some of these questions, and they're open to all of you or to any of you. I have a question from Yoshito Katse, sorry about that. How many active users are in the metaverse? And how many of them are in low to middle income countries? And which platform is the most common? Anyone want to take a stab at that one? Oh, okay.
So yeah, well, I will take the question if you don't mind, and I'm going to turn it around a little bit instead of giving a direct answer. I would say that one of the things we talk a lot about First of all, I think it's a great question, and one that I personally would have to go to Google and do some research to find out the answer to, or a variety of answers to. I don't think there is a single answer. I think what's interesting about the metaverse is that there's not just a limited number of people. There's not a finite number of personas you could have. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 15 people on this call right now on our end who could each have 15 different identities or more. And so what's interesting from my perspective is that it's not about just the number of individuals, but it's the number of identities, the number of personas that you can explore and create there, the number of versions of yourself that you can reinvent and become on any given time. And what that means in terms of overall inclusivity, that parts of your being that you can create a version of, and that reality that then becomes your reality manifested in the way that you want it to be seen. That's the first thing. I think there's an infinite answer to your first part of your question. And the second thing is, in terms of countries where are people getting involved? This is the fundamental thing, is we don't want it to just be in primary developed, where all the venture capital, where all of the money is countries. We want everybody to have a chance, whether you are as I always joke around, in Manhattan, or whether you are in Sierra Leone. You should have the ability to have access to the same worlds, to have access to having the same creation of identities, to have the same interactivities, et cetera, and the same upside benefits, not only as a participant, but as an empowered participant who can benefit personally and monetarily on that platform. So I think that the answer, while I know that's not an answer that you probably wanted to hear, I think it's an important question, because we all need to consider, how can we make sure that people have that ability to have that identity? How can we ensure that people around the world will be able to be involved? And to your final question, an infinite number of platforms, whatever platform that may be of the day.
Yeah, if I can.
So just to follow up on that. Oh, I'm sorry, Noah. Would you like to chime in?
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry. Okay. So please, Melvin.
Okay.
Okay. Just 1 minute.
Sure.
I have a small comment. So though I don't know the statistics, so I try to provide some clues about my understanding of the question from our Japanese experts. So thank you very much for your concern for those people from developing and low-income country. I think it's another area, domain, where standard can play some role, because with the realistic experience for people in this metaverse, it doesn't happen at the magic snap of one's finger. It takes a lot of underlying technology to make it happen, but those technology are unseen. You cannot see them, just like the ice bird below the water, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It exists. It matters a lot. So by providing the innovative technology through standardization in some form, we will enable cloud computing, edge computing, and general computing, and computing for graphic generation, computing for AI. They all work together in a more accessible, affordable way for all those kind of technology to be deployed in those developing countries with quite limited, resource and income funds, and for people with relatively, I don't want to use the word low, but undesirable technical capability as a general local people to install and to deploy them with quite low threshold. This is a task for standard people. Sorry for taking your time. So Melvin, sorry.
No problem, Melvin, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really hard question to, to answer. But like I said, right, if you consider like a platform like a Roblox, Roblox has about 54 million users a day logging in, and as I said, it's about the population of South Korea, which logs in, every single day. Then you got games like Axie Infinity, which has anything between 2.5 to 5 million people sort of logging every single day. But when you compare the play to earn and the play and earn sort of metaverses, you see a lot of the third world countries, all the lower income countries sort of going more into the play to earn space. Axie, for example, about 40 to 50% of players are from Philippines. and for a lot of them, essentially, that is their way of income. I mean, they gain.
Yeah, but to the point about standardization, look at Twitter right now. We're trying to figure out whether 5% of the users are bots. So I think that we are going to come up with measurements about data, what we touch, for how long we touch it, where we touch it, that need to be standardized, and we need to use a common language. So yes, if I have 10 persona, am I one person or not? And it's going to open up a bunch of standardization questions, to your point, Noah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Another question from the audience. It's also kind of a broad question for anyone who wants to take it. If you want to just put your hand up with the raise hand feature, then I can see who would like to answer it. So the question is from Yvonne Zhu. She says, we can achieve vision and sound hearing in the metaverse, but what about touch, smell, etc.? I think that these are important human senses to enable us to learn and experience. Otherwise, we cannot say, I was there and I experienced something. Thoughts on that? Robin?
So, yeah, it's a great question. And there is so much research going on now and products on the market. There are full haptic suits that you can wear. And so you're getting tactile feedback. The gamers were for two audiences go first, the gamers and the pornographers. You watch them and you know what will happen. But so haptic suits will give you a feeling of touch. Even on Zoom, Eric Yuan has talked a lot about you will be able to smell the coffee and be able to shake hands. And so these things are coming. I have used smell-o-vision type things in the metaverse and on the internet. It's still not really pretty. It doesn't feel natural yet at all, but we will get there. So yes, all of your senses will be involved, just the way telemedicine now, really all it is a HIPAA compliant Zoom call, but eventually you will be able to put in a USB stethoscope or an otoscope or whatever it is and give real feedback from a real piece of hardware. And that's the way it will play out in the metaverse, where whether it's full suits or whether it's a smell-o-vision USB attachment, it's going to be there.
I just want to weigh in on this. What we are finding is that people will imagine what they can't experience. So one thing is we're developing a product for people who have basically mental illness, and one of the things that it's very hard to do with avatar systems is facial expressions. And we're finding that facial expressions, when we do them, is actually very distracting. People would rather imagine a facial expression than see it. And that as long as the voice or the chat is representative, people can imagine the emotion or hear the emotion in the voice or the chat, and they don't need the facial expression. That they move their sense of they learn to get the information from another place. So when the source is imperfect, it's better to rely on something. People are very, very good at using tools, as I said, and they don't need everything. They will compensate, they will appropriate the technology very well without everything being there.
Thanks. Thinking about these immersive experiences like that, what we were talking about with brands, I wanted to ask Melvin or maybe Justin or actually anyone, what do you think the competitive advantage is, or is there an obvious competitive advantage for brands and companies to be in the metaverse? Does everyone need to be in the metaverse?
I don't think everyone needs to be in the metaverse, but if you're going to be in the metaverse, you have to start becoming endemic. You need to become relevant. As I said in the Gucci example, they made themselves endemic by creating like digital twins of actual events and mirroring it into the virtual world, and that was like a stepping stone, and they started, the Gucci Gaming Academy as well with Face It, to really get into esports. I think that they are sort of taking the road whereby, they're sort of inching their way forward, which is probably the right approach. I think if there's anybody from MasterCard here, they're probably going to kill me, but But is the exact opposite would be for a brand like MasterCard, to sponsor League of Legends, in Shanghai. But what is the relevance of of MasterCard within the game?
So it still needs to be, I mean, it's just like regular advertising, right? Or internet advertising. It needs to be contextual. It needs to be aligned with the brand itself, the mission of the brand. Yeah, it's right. Just a.
So if a brand is going to go in and not be endemic, then I would say that, it's probably money wasted, and money going down the drain.
The days of the internet advertising. Sorry about that, Justin. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to speak over you. So I totally agree. I think that to a certain degree, it won't make sense for everybody to necessarily have a metaverse presence, right? I mean, or at least not the same way. I mean, we won't be creating virtual server racks and that you can buy in the metaverse. Although maybe I should team up with some people, try to sell them off to you, and prove myself wrong. But I think that from a software perspective, pivoting away from a hardware infrastructure kind of side and thinking about from a software, and specifically SaaS type businesses, I think that first of all, a lot of the world is moving toward open source software. What that means is that there's normally an open source component of your software code base that everyone around the world would have access to through something like GitHub or whatever. You can write the code, I can come in and fork it and start creating my own project off of it that I can then push out and commit to the rest of the commons to use, or I can use a portion of it for my own. That's called an open core model, which means it's open source at the core, but I can proprietarize, to make up a word, my portion of that. And so why am I mentioning that? Because I think that one of the huge ways that you differentiate, why you create this competitive moats around a SaaS business, is around a community. And I think in the metaverse, you have an opportunity to create a more immersive community-oriented experience, both on the direct development of this open source model, which all software is based off of today, all relevant software is based off of today, as well as the overall kind of network connectivity of individuals who work on it, right? No longer is it just that I have stickers on the back of my laptop that lets the person on the other side of the conference table know what programming languages I can code in, but I have NFTs around the different events that we attended, or the different inside joke things that we work on together, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that is the potential for some of the more boring back office enterprise level organizations to get involved.
Great, Robin?
I couldn't agree more. And I'll give you two examples. First of all, the master of this, I believe, is Nike. So Nike, if you go down to Times Square, I'm in New York, has this big sneaker ad, and it's all NFTs. They're all digital sneakers that you buy for your avatars. There's also personalization involved. So you can make your sneakers look just how you want to look. And so there's this status symbol. And the other thing is a different kind of NFT called a proof of attendance protocol. So I go to an event, and because I have my NFT, I get certain privileges. And the more I engage at this event, the more privileges I get. So I get to meet the baseball player, or shake the rock star's hand, or get a t-shirt. And it's the utility that is built into these NFTs that are going to make them so extraordinary as loyalty programs. And we have a generation that's coming up that is so fluent in this. So I think if you're a brand that wants to stick around for the next generation of shoppers or concert goers or entertainment goers, you have no choice but to get involved in the metaverse. I would just do it slowly, step by step, and very purposefully understanding your brand. Melvin, I see you nodding. That makes me happy.
Yeah, Noah, you have your hand raised. What would you like to add?
Yeah, thank you very much for giving me the floor. I would like to echo Justin, who has just mentioned the importance of open source. I think open source is quite important, not only because it gained popularity by attracting millions of 100 millions of developers in a certain area, but also it just lower down the threshold for people, especially those organization people living in less developed countries, regions. This is very important. But in addition to the open source codes, I would like to mention probably when you think about accessibility, easy side to data side. For example, if we develop a very complex algorithm that works in the metaverse, may require corresponding data side to train them, to test them, to verify their validity, and how we can make sure all the data sites are equally accessible and software code. This is another open question. But to my surprise today, I wonder how many of us are very interested in applying metaverse technology to industry environment, for example, manufacturing. This is a really promising area from my point of view, because how we can generate a very successful model and cash flow, and the industry are quite eager to adopt such kind of technologies from the early day Industry 4.0 or this cyber-physical space, digital twin. More or less, all the technology are intertwined to generate something very exciting. Can we put them in the context of metaverse for industry and metaverse to B rather than mainly metaverse to C? I think probably this is a quite open direction, which represents a lot of opportunity for all of us, especially those who are working in standardization areas. Thank you very much. Just some comment.
Is that back to you, Robin, or is that your hand from before? Okay, excellent. So we're talking about NFTs. I have to ask the question about sustainability and energy consumption. This is something that comes up a lot. It comes up a lot at just even when we talk about AI in general, right? Or how sustainable or huge machine learning models. Sometimes it even gets into the ethical conversation of whether or not it's ethical to be consuming so much power. Can you talk to me a little bit about sustainability? How are there ways that we can make the metaverse consume less power when we're talking about hundreds of millions of digital items?
Sure. You said Justin, right?
I would love you to answer that, Justin. Yes.
Oh, I thought I heard my name. Sorry.
No.
In the virtual world, my hearing is much better than here. So, I'm sure I'll take a first swing. I'm sure there are others who have thoughts as well. I think this is a big thing for us, right? I mean, a lot of our business historically has been in the data center area. So think about all the heavy metal, as we call it, the servers, the storage equipment, et cetera, et cetera. And especially when you think about supercomputing or high performance computing is the new way that we call that. And all the AI models that run on top of that. These are very power intensive operations. And I think there are a couple of things that are very hopeful around that from a sustainability point of view. Number one, although the workloads are increasing exponentially, I saw a report the other day that workloads have increased around 2,000% in some cases with regards to AI. We've gotten really, really efficient at the usage of GPUs and CPUs, so graphic processing units and computing processing units. Those are basically the two kind of fundamental parts of a computer that process all the data to do what model you want to do. GPUs being much more intensive, and they're used for gaming and for AI specifically. And so number one is the efficiency of how that compute works is getting better and better and better. And as it does, we can do more with less, basically. So that's number one. Number two, we have a lot of commitments around the world. I mean, you see the huge public cloud providers, our own company, and across the board, tech companies as a whole are making huge carbon commitments. We are making pledges toward being carbon negative by, I have to go back to my notes and see exactly which year, but we're not the only one. And so when you see that trend across the industry taking place, that people are committing toward that, and we see the technical capabilities behind it, that's very empowering. And then finally, I'll say that I think that a lot of the compute, as the further we can push that away from the data center and into the edge environment, will be the better. This is why I mentioned swarm learning earlier, which basically takes a lot of that machine learning model out of a centralized or federated cloud type of environment and pushes it out to the edge. Less data, you send the machine learning parameters out to the edge, and those nodes can work and talk to each other and evolve over very fast periods of time. The edge devices require a lot less summarized power consumption than data centers as a whole do. Not to say that we will get away from doing high performance compute, and we're not going to get away from public cloud providers and things like that. But as those trends move more toward the edge, and as those trends move toward more efficiency, and as those trends move toward industries as a whole taking steps to reduce carbon footprints and recycle our old tech and get more efficient, I think it's a very positive outlook.
Good. I like that. Very, very optimistic view of it. Thank you, Justin. Dr. di Bello.
Well, obviously I'm using metaverses for business, not entertainment. And what we're doing is we're wargaming big business problems that if you wargamed them in real life, you would have a much bigger carbon footprint. You'd be flying people all over the place. You'd be using big equipment, and you would be making mistakes that you then have to replicate again. So doing it in a metaverse, you are using a lot of computer power, but you're not flying people all over the world, and you're not digging up a lot of earth, and you're not having to put it back. So we're doing an exercise now with one of the biggest companies in the world, and everybody's meeting in a virtual world from 9 countries. And that's saving a lot of aircraft fuel. So I think that there is a trade-off there. And then you're also not, you're saving about 2 years of time, wargaming a pretty big ESG problem. And you're not also making some mistakes with governance in a country that you might make, and you're kind of saving some time. I do think you have to worry about, I just want to make one more comment about branding. I think you want to avoid a means ends inversion. When Second Life first started, everybody was in there, and now they're all not in there, even Reuters. There is a metaverse, and then there's a metaverse. Being in a metaverse in a particular way and being in there in the right way matters. Just getting yourself in there is not enough. Getting yourself in there in a way that makes your presence known in a good way is, I think, what some of the cosmetics companies are doing that Robin talked about is really cool. But some of what the other companies are doing is kind of, very 2003, been there, done that. So I think those of us who've been in metaverses for 15 years have seen some of the mistakes, and we're seeing some of the companies make those mistakes again. So
Robin, do you want to add something before we move to the next topic?
I don't think you could have a sustainability discussion without talking about mining of coin and crypto and NFTs. And I don't want to geek out on people, but the early mining, like proof of stake versus proof of work, the early mining techniques were rather energy intensive. You had all these programmers basically bidding on cracking algorithms using servers all over the world. You can look up the numbers, but basically minting a coin costs as much as running power in your apartment building in New York for a year. The newer coins that are coming onto the market are more energy efficient. Melvin, you can probably add more color than I can, but Solana and so the Polygon chain. And so I think you're going to see moves. The mining industry knows that it was terribly inefficient. Honest about their inefficiencies rather than compared to minting money, but terribly inefficient and not sustainable. And so I think you're going to see new models of staking that are less energy intensive. And it's so important for sustainability.
I mean, if I can just add on to Robin a little bit, I think that people are now starting to feel the pinch of what being not sustainable as a blockchain means. I mean, when you look at a blockchain like Ethereum, when you mint an NFT, it can cost you upwards of $2,000, to mint one NFT. Which is absolutely ridiculous, because the amount of gas fees that it takes to run, those insane numbers, in terms of the TPS, and everything else is just crazy. It's just not sustainable, in the long run. And if it's not usable or if it's not affordable, then it's pointless. So blockchains are starting to recognize that, and exactly about like what Robin said, you've got Solana now, you've got Tezos, you've got quite a few, blockchains, they're starting to move in the right direction.
Of course, I was talking about mining, like gold, copper, coal.
Traditional mining,
Yeah.
Traditional
like
mining.
big trucks.
Not crypto mining. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. All right. We're over time, but the online audience is very engaged with the conversation, and lots of questions have come in. So I'd like to ask some of those to all of you once again. This question is from Marco. He says, based on one of the initial statements from Dr. Di Bello, regulation has still not caught up with Web 2.0. What will be the key issues of Metaverse deployment, assuming a similar delay in Metaverse regulation catching up?
Oh, I really have no idea. One thing I've learned in my career is that we don't know where technology will land. I started out developing FutureView with a completely, if I look at my proposals to the National Science Foundation and NASA from 20 years ago, my prediction about where technology would land, where the metaverse would be, are just completely wrong. But the picture is better and more optimistic. So I think that people do the right thing, and that things actually sort themselves out. That people are people want to be inclusive, and people want to do the right thing. So I just try to go with hope in science.
Noah?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I think I don't have a crystal ball, so I cannot give any very useful prediction about any timing. But however, for me, I think usually following the trajectory of a certain technology in the past, whatever it's Bitcoin or quantum computing or any other technology, usually follow some similar trajectories. In the beginning, there's quite a large heat wave of technical people. They are proposing, business-minded people, they are proposing different scenarios, very exciting technologies. But regulatory consideration can be in some time liked, but cannot be totally missing. Otherwise, we will be facing a big trouble. So I think take AI, for example, now more scientists or people with mixed background, for example, a PhD with several years of scientific training is the best person to work on such topics and the explainability of AI or interpreting. So take this similarity, I think we can take some action. The early regulatory people or people with regulatory minds join us, the better. For example, in our study 16, I think in the co-advancing group or the first group, we will be create several parallel tracks. Many tracks may cover different technical areas, but definitely there will be one track to attract people who want to, have a consideration for regulatory matters. For sure, I think action can be taken from our side. We also encourage similar action to take place in other places as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have another question from the audience. It's a big one. We've been talking a lot about the promise of the metaverse and all the positive aspects. This one has a little bit to do with risks. So the question is, how can we intermediate evolved AI when engineers themselves do not know what happens inside the complex process, except making some kind of retro engineering research? In fact, they start the AI and let's wait to see the results. GAN images included. In a metaverse future space where AI, such as a metahuman, for example, is going to have a relationship with a real person, how do we intermediate against the possibility of being persuaded or manipulated? This plays into online safety, content moderation, all of those interesting topics. Hard one. What about digital twins? We were talking about digital twins. That's another kind of related aspect of this. I don't know if you have anything to add about that. Kepeng, you were actually something, we were discussing this the other day. Do you think that there is a risk or a way to mitigate against this sort of thing? In my opinion, not that it really counts, but in my opinion, I think that it does come down to content moderation. It comes down to basically being in the room with these characters, let's say, to be ensuring that things that aren't supposed to go wrong don't go wrong. But what are your perspectives on this?
I think content moderation, you're right, but Dr. Di Bello talked about it before, is iteration, so that you learn a kangaroo is not a bus, and you iterate and you learn just like a baby learns, and that's kind of where we are with AI, that you learn and iterate some rules to keep making things better. Are there biases? Is there room for like total misinterpret? My joke is that, so I said, you'd always have a career in the metaverse. You will always have a career in the legal field of the metaverse. You should, and in the regulatory field. And you know that regulation traditionally has just been slower. They don't react until they see the problem having real world consequences, and then they wake up. And hopefully our industry, I'd like to think, is smarter now about putting up some guardrails around our worlds. But I don't know that human behavior change. In our quest for faster and faster innovation, we are going to run into problems. But I think iterating, one of the great things about software, I have a Tesla, whatever you think about Elon, my car gets smarter every day, or I get stupider. I can't figure out which. But through software, I get new features, I get a safer car. I think if we all start thinking about this model that we build once is no longer a model that we build once, but that we're constantly iterating on that model, and our products that we buy today get smarter tomorrow, which is kind of amazing.
Mm-hmm. Just to add to what Robin said, when I probably spend 30 hours a week in virtual worlds. And when I first started doing that 15 years ago, I had a dream that that I went to a conference and my avatar had gotten there first and checked into my hotel room, and that they wouldn't let me in because my avatar had the key. And I was sitting in the lobby trying to figure out what to do. And person next to me said, yeah, that happened to me too. And I don't know how to get in my room. So, but obviously I've adjusted. I don't have those nightmares anymore. But the idea is that, and my avatar looks exactly like me because I do business in virtual worlds. So the idea is, you're right, the iterative aspect of the merging, people, in my experience, people adjust. And they go through this whole developmental cycle of modifying, even the way they modify their avatar. They go through making it look exactly like them, to making it look better, to making it look like, a goon. There's all sorts of iterative developmental cycles that people go through as they adjust to virtual worlds. And I think we just have to go with it. Just like the internet in the 80s and 90s.
That's right.
We got through it.
Justin?
Yeah, from a risk perspective, I agree with what's been said, no disagreements there. But what concerns me is the potential for misinformation, for bullying from individual and even state actors, to some degree. In a metaverse environment, I kind of think back to some of the horrible examples of when companies tried to create, for example, a Twitter bot. And the Twitter bot was trained by the internet's going to do what the internet does, and it trained it in the worst ways possible. And that bot lived, I think, about 24 hours before it created like a decade-long PR disaster. And so, if you can train a Twitter bot to do that, to what extent will individuals, if you can create an infinite number of identities, to what extent would a bad actor create bad entities that maybe they are not even directly controlling, but they just trained to control in nefarious ways? And to what extent can you create that and an individual doesn't know that they're engaging with an AI-driven persona online, but they're engaging with a real persona? And at what point then does that start to create ultimate misinformation confusion. That's a lot of what the problem that we see in politics today is, that there's just you don't oftentimes know what is real or what is not real, because the misinformation is attacking the very thought of trusting what you read, see, or hear. And so if that happens in the metaverse at an identity level, then what could that effect be for your individual involvement, your trust in that environment? And if that trust breaks down, then does the whole thing have a leg to stand on? So I'm not trying to paint like a gloomy picture, but just you asked the question, like, what's the risk? And I think that's a risk. It's a risk at the individual doing that to all the way to the state level actors doing that. And it's something that we need to have follow-on discussions on, and maybe we should.
Precisely. I think that, the disinformation disorder that you described is right now being exacerbated in the regular internet, on social media, with things like, large language models. The question is, could we scale things like that into machine learning models that would actually make autonomous metaverse characters that could do these types of things? It's a very, very fascinating area, and yes, something that we should probably follow up in the future. Thank you so much, Justin. Kepeng, back to you.
Thank you. So about the risks, I want to add one thing about the privacy. I think privacy is very important that we need to pay attention to. Because currently in the metaverse, all of the information will be on the internet, for example, our identity and the personal data. So if we can't protect the privacy, then people will be hurt in different ways. So I just want to add that. Thank you.
Thank you. Noah.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think we are talking about those aspects which are non-technical, and also I just want to mention because people mention the term digital twin. I think my understanding of a digital twin started a couple of years ago when I was based in Europe, deeply involved in some activity for Industry 4.0. At that time, it's not a mature moment for people to formulate the concept and the definition for digital twin, but eventually it evolved. For digital twin, it represents many things ideal and fanciful. However, we need to be very careful about its sustainability issue. For example, it's a balanced budget to generate a realistic and really to the extreme, it generates realistic to the item representing the original model. You have the best digital twin, but that is untenable because that costs a huge amount of resource for computing power, electricity needed to do that. So from our point of view, usually we need to have a balanced budget about how to generating a practical, useful digital twin in specific to certain use case and scenario. I think we are going to work on that. Also, digital twin involve a lot of risk and privacy issues to be explored at the same time. So I just want to mention this aspect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Noah.
Noah, and I think, I just was going to add for your standards. I do think there will be standards, like the way the motion picture has R-rated, this contains scenes of nudity. You will have standards that say, this is a synthetic human you're talking to, because you have body image issues and so I think it will become, I hope, standard practice to say this image was altered and how it was altered. And I think that has to happen if we're going to survive this, is transparency.
That's a perfect bridge, Robin, to the next question. One of our final online questions. It's actually about standardization. Marco says, thanks for the great presentations. Considering standardization of this comprehensive multi-technology environment, do you expect that new application scenarios in the metaverse will also bring new requirements to the individual technology standards? For example, DLT, AI, augmented reality, virtual reality, etc. So maybe I'll stick with you, Noah, or Kepeng, since we're talking about standards. Do you believe that it'll actually impact individual technology standards?
Yes.
I think Kepeng can first, can take the first place. I will make some comments if necessary. Thank you, Kepeng.
Okay, and my answer is yes, because the metaverse will bring new requirements to the existing technologies. For example, immersive. These are the new requirements, and also the combination of the virtual world and the real world. For example, previously for the game, we don't need to consider about the metaverse, but currently people want to wear the glasses, the AR glasses to play the games. Then these are the new requirements. How to fulfill the new requirements, then we need a new functionality to support that. So that's my answer. So definitely, yes, we have new requirements, then we need to support new functionalities to support the new use cases. Thanks.
Yeah, on top of that, on top of what Kepeng said, of course, I fully agree with what Kepeng said. But beyond this, I just want to mention, don't forget the fact, Metaverse doesn't exist like a castle in the air. It has a solid footing to be supported by existing technology. For one thing, a lot of AR, XR, extended XR technology have been standardized. For one thing, you need to have a high definition video coding and decoding technology. For example, we have this VVC just released 2 years ago, but I don't think current VVC is fully compatible with the newly emerging requirement for supporting metaverse. So there may be a strong influx of new requirement to drive the further optimization and further evolution of those existing multimedia standards. This is for one thing. The other thing, just like it will open up new dimensions through the introduction of a new requirement use case scenario. So you will see several parallel tracks, several parallel battlefields for this case standardization to support metaverse. However, I think there are always two phases to a certain thing. That's just like any coin has two faces. One is more positive, the other a little bit not so positive. I don't call it negative, but we need to be very careful. Too early or over standardization may always present some risks that may, how to say, stop innovations in its early stage. So how we can keep the pace, how we can define the scope for standardization is always of top priority over what kind of feature, what technology to standardize. Okay, this is my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Noah. So we have time for 2 quick questions, and then we'll need to close. We have a question from Emil. The question is, how can governments, industry, and academia partner to ensure that the metaverse can be used to help achieve the SDGs related to health, education, and equality? And what role would AI play in this?
I'll take a swing at that one. So I think that, first of all, a forum like this is a perfect example of how you can start. You get the right people to the right platform and a continuous series of conversations. That's the starting point. I think from there it goes from talk to do, and I think the do part is very similar to open source software in a very real way. Open source software is basically a project where a lot of people say, I understand the problem, I invested in doing this, I have something I can add a value to it, and I'm going to get involved from a leadership to an individual coding perspective and everything in between. And I think that open source model that we use for developing software can and will be used to develop social impact in a variety of different impact verticals, be that natural disasters, financial inclusion, autonomous drive, et cetera, et cetera. And within each of these areas, whether you're talking about natural disaster in an area or the agricultural sustainability in the same area, there are opportunities to capture data, to learn on the data, and to model that data in a way that is predictive and allows us to have a better understanding of the environment and experience in that environment. So AI has the potential to be at the core of that. We have a potential to use the open source type model to bring people together working on things. And I think this type of forum is the exact type of potential environment that can start all of that in the right direction. It's a great question.
So,
Robin?
and I would just add that it is so important, more important than ever, as you can see by what's happening with college education, that academia and government and industry align themselves so that people coming out of the classroom have the skills that are necessary. And you're starting to see it happening. Google has Google University, IBM is credentialing people. You are going to need reskilling like we've never seen before in order to take a lot of our traditional jobs and have them AI assisted, robot assisted, and it's going to involve a very different set of skills. It's not an insurmountable problem, but it's going to take that triad of government, industry, and academics working together and identifying new people with new skills or reskilling their old people to tackle these problems. And that's why I get really excited when I see cities appointing chief digital officers to kind of frame this conversation.
Thank you, Robin. I don't see any other hands up. So I'm going to ask my final question. It is a question to all of you. And I wanted to ask, what would you ask of the UN and the AI for Good platform in order to move forward? How can we help in making AI fulfill its potential for enabling possibilities in the metaverse? What is your ask of AI for Good? Robin, I'm gonna take advantage of you since your hand is still up. No, it's okay.
I meant to lower my hand, but
It's all right. It's all right. Go ahead, Noah.
I have this crazy theory that in the future we will resolve our wars in the metaverse without ever lifting a gun or a real thing. That's what I would ask as we start moving towards.
You know what, Robin? I'm going to take what you just said right there, and I'm going to play on that. So I have a theory that there are no social problems that can't be solved over a beer. Proverbial beer. I don't drink alcohol, but I've never seen someone not be able to hash out problems face to face where they're able to work together. And I think a lot of the frictions that we see around the world, I know my government has problems with a lot of other governments where I happen to have very close personal friends who are citizens of those governments. And so, but when we get together, those problems don't necessarily exist. I know one of the things we've discussed with the AI for Good is taking this concept of online, webinar based versus on the other end of the spectrum, a once or twice a year, everybody has to fly in and see each other face to face. And how can we get somewhere in the middle of that? And one of the examples where I think the UN could really help is partnering with folks. Well, I'm happy to volunteer our company to do this, as using our centers where we can pull people together, academia, government, non-governmental organizations, startups, whoever wants to come and be a part of this, to have throughout the year, along those kind of vertical oriented areas, opportunities to come together, meet each other, have that proverbial beer, and move forward. I think if you do that at scale on a repetitive basis, it's kind of like what I said earlier, that this forum starts the right conversations, that starts the relationships, and those relationships will be fundamental, and that would be a great place where the UN could work together.
Thank you, Justin. And we have literally 30 seconds. So if Dr. di Bello or Noah would like to say something within the next...
Just 10 seconds. I would like to see AI for Good is a very good platform. This is maybe 50 year, I think, if my memory is correct, 60 years, because it's the first AI for Good event that took place in 2017. And we learned a lot. Our study group benefited a lot because I mentioned several first group. Several of them are just a brainchild of this kind of very heated discussion, brainstorming session. I would like to use AI from my perspective, use it as a great sounding board to collect the inputs from greater thought leadership, people like you with very rich abundance background, not purely technical people. It's my biggest and single expectation to use as a greatest
Thank
sounding
you.
board?
I'm very sorry, but we have to close this session. I'm sorry that we couldn't get to the last comment. I wanted to thank all of our distinguished speakers, all of our panelists, our online guests, and obviously the ITU and AI for Good platform. Thank you very much for being with us today, and hope to see you on the next webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for participating in today's AI for Good session. We hope you are new, innovative, and engaging in today's event. We now encourage you to continue the conversation on the live video wall in the neural network. Here you can ask questions, like and comment, share links, complete the satisfaction survey, connect with interesting profiles, or speak one-on-one using the chat and video function. After the 30-minute networking session, we invite you to explore the lobby, try the smart matching quiz, visit the virtual exhibits and poster boards, and build your personalized AI for Good program.